I am a shad artist. My name is Nuu-Chah-Nulth, which comes from inherited from my grandfather, passed to me, and it was from his father's name, which is a generational name, which comes from Kayukut, actually, from 5 generations ago. And the reference of Nuu-Chah-Nulth is standing in the water on a rock. And that is referring to one of the 3 major floods that is in our history that happened on the coast here. I come from Shah, and the closest translation from our Barclay dialect to the English dialect is the smell of oil, and particularly the whale oil, because my great-grandfather was the last in my direct family to be involved and partake in the whale hunt. To quote my grandmother, "Ichi ichtub, ichi ichtub," that great big mystery, that great being. If you're coastal people on the water, especially in a fog, and you're paddling along, and next thing you know, you have this great sound of this blowhole, and you see this back, and maybe you might see a tail, and then it's gone again. So there's that great being, that great mystery, where I believe that reference comes from.
And so that reference is to the beautiful work that I have behind me here on the wall, that great being. That is in sort of in honor to that history as a whaling community. Is there anything else that you can tell me about this particular piece? In that I notice that it's diving, it seems, and I'm seeing the air bubbles come up. How can you explain why you chose that pose?
A lot of my pieces, not all, but a lot of my pieces are fortunately from my childhood upbringing with my grandparents. And I spent many years out on the water in just a simple little open 16-foot aluminum boat with my grandfather, triangulating areas for landing between land and reefs and islands to fishing holes. I remember off in the distance, to me, it looked like a waterfall in the distance. And I'm like, I looked at, and I referred to him as Old Dad. I'm like, "Old Dad, how come there's a waterfall over there?" Because it was in front of an island. And he says, "Oh, ichtub, ichtub," and he went that way. And then he shut the engine off and pulled the motor up, and we just glided along. And this ichtub came up again, and it seen us, and then it just slowly went down, and I just remember just looking at this thing. It's so massive, and it's way bigger than our boat, and it was just so elegant. It just sent a surge of boiling of water to the surface, even though it was like, I don't know, 3 feet underwater. It's just amazing, and it's just a memory that I'll always hold. And these bubbles trailing as well as this great being just dove down until I could no longer see it. And this material, I felt fortunate because it has those tones, those shades in it, and that's naturally from the nature of the tree. And then the ribboning of the grain, kind of, to me, it implies the water movement as well.
I can see that. Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I felt very, I'm always very thankful for my upbringing, my roots. I've been a career artist now for over 3 decades. I started in precious metal, but I always knew and planned on doing wood carving. 4 years ago now, 5 years ago, I was on the board for the Carving Edge Festival, one of the festivals on the coast here. And they asked if I wanted to do a demonstration or a talk or PowerPoint. And I said, well, what I would really like to do is talk to my mentors and my peers and have a conversation to basically come up with a dialogue, a reference of how to describe Nuu-Chah-Nulth art. Because when people would ask me, well, how do you know that's a Tim Paul? How do you know that's a Pat Amos? How do you know that's, you know, Kelly Robinson? You know, it's that visual signature. And the thing is with Nuu-Chah-Nulth art, what I would refer to it as is it's nature. It's free.
This show that we're doing here, Shapeshifters, is focusing on what Lee Brooks, a longtime gallery owner, was calling the 4 different coast styles. And it was something that he noticed over being in the business for so long, those subtle differences, and that maybe hasn't been written about as much, but it sounds like conversations are happening, of course, about that. And of course, you've been aware of that for a long time. So it's wonderful to hear your explanation about your area and that style. I've learned a lot in doing this show and about the different coast styles, and that really makes sense to me as you talk about it. I can visualize it and I can see those differences. So that's very, very helpful. Thank you. And I know that'll help our visitors too.
Yeah, you're welcome. And then to refer to this piece behind you, that's all one continuous, seamless piece of material. I like doing that. One is just to honor the material, and 2 is just my personal challenge and growth as an artist. So a number of my pieces will, you know, like even pieces behind me here. A quiche, little being of the mountains, and he lives in a cave. So that's the one circle one with the cave over in the one beside it is Nuu-Chah-Nulth, old mum, my grandmother, how she taught me how the moon affects all of us, because we're individually made up so much of liquid fluid, and how that affects us and controls the tides, which directly controls the feed and the salmon and how we harvest and the shellfish. I just want to show being thankful for such the material that we still have on the coast here.
Are you exploring with any other materials, or are you just happy with that at the moment?
I'll just show you just a few pieces in progress, if that's okay.
Of course.
So here's a Cuckowin, see here, which is our killer whale. And then there's a Cuckowinchich, which is the sea wolf.
Beautiful.
And then there's a large panel that I'm refurbishing that is going to be in the community here. It's been a journey. I you know, as we touched on, I started in precious metal, and I didn't have any mentor to. It was so, you know, the reference, the phrase of trial and error. I used to joke and say, well, it was error and error. So until I'm very patient, but I'm very fussy. So I did a lot of jewelry before I felt I had enough to even show anyone. A lot of them ended up in my scrap box before I would, you know, I needed to be happy with it first.
Right.
Before showing anyone, whether it was a gift or whether it was for the commercial market.
Would there be any message or feeling that you hope people might take away from seeing your artwork here? Of course, you haven't seen the whole show yet. I hope you can come down and see it at some point. It's pretty wonderful. But would you have any hopes of what people might take away from seeing your work?
I hope that it draws them in, that they get a good feeling from it, from the look of it, from the feel of it, if they feel like touching it. Because that's another big reason why I switched to, always planned on doing carving, because it's very therapeutic in my opinion. It's a great gift from nature. I'm a fan of paint, but myself, I don't use a lot of paint on what I create. And in part is because the grain of the material, especially like on this one, the variation of color, the variation of grain and movement, all the ribboning and movement in it. It's, for me personally, I just, I often say I don't compete with nature. I'll go with what nature shows me and what my teaching and my grandparents, my upbringing shows me. That I hope that I catch a young male or female's attention for the Nuu-Chah-Nulth region. That will be my small contribution as an artist for my nation and my neighboring nations. I want the next generation to do even better. So that's my hope and my goal.
I love that. That's beautiful. Yeah. Well, thank you, Gordon. It's been a pleasure talking with you and learning a bit more about you and your work. And we're just so happy that you're a part of the exhibition here. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Great. Cool. Okay. Sure.